that's what I think is so important, because people, spiritual seekers, they seek after these high experiences, the lights and the bliss and out of body stuff. And I've had all of those. I've had so many out of body experiences and flying through dimensions and all of that. And it's fun. It's interesting. But the most important thing is the fruit, meaning, are you more loving? Are you more kind? Are you more compassionate, especially to yourself?
Hello, my dear friends. I'm Donald Lee, and this is Expressing and Revealing Your Truth with Donald Lee. It's a podcast in which I help you understand the truth about who you really are and how you can express and reveal that truth in the world. To do that, I interview people who have had transformational spiritual experiences, the type of experiences that many of us wish we had, but never do. Yet by learning from my guests' experiences and the wisdom they've gained from those experiences, all of us can glimpse a bigger vision of who we really are and how we can live our lives more fully, more peacefully, more lovingly. Be sure to download my free mini ebook containing 5 of the 50 parables from my popular book, The Band Director's Lessons About Life. These little parables are short, easy to read, inspiring, and also help you to understand more about the truth of who you really are. There is a link in the show notes below to get your free ebook. In this episode, I interviewed Derek Rydall. He is a best-selling author, speaker, and thought leader on human potential, purpose, and conscious success in times of profound disruption, times like right now. He has had several transformational spiritual experiences, including near-death and out-of-body experiences. He shares a bit of that in this interview, but mostly we talk about what these spiritual experiences mean. We don't want to just focus on the dramatic, the unbelievable, the sensational. We really want to focus on what it means, on how we can transform and develop ourselves. So sit back and prepare yourself for a deep and fascinating conversation with Derek Rydall. Hello, my dear friends. We're back today with a famous guest, Mr. Derek Rydall. And he's got an incredible journey and incredible recovery from it. So we're going to just jump in. Welcome, Derek. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, brother. It's an honor, really an honor to be here.
I appreciate that. My own humble little podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, Derek, start. So we want to hear your story of spiritual transformation. So just begin and tell us in your own words. You've told the story enough times. You know it.
Yeah.
I don't need to prompt you a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it starts off like a lot of people. I mean, I spent without going all the way back to my childhood, I'd always was a seeker. My whole childhood, I was a seeker. And a tinkerer, and I would take apart anything and put it back together again. Started with, computers and equipment and the VCR and the sprinkler system and anything electronic. I would take it apart, put it back together again. And I didn't know it then, but what I was really I wanted to understand the insides of things. I wanted to understand how we see the thing on the surface, the little light flashes, but how and why? What's really going on behind that facade, behind that, And I couldn't have put those words to it, but there was something, a sense of there's a world that we see, taste, touch, sense, and there's something else. There's something deeper. There's something more. And then that led to me having this sense that there's something more to me, that there's a reason for me, that it's not arbitrary. It's not accidental in the same way that little light, that little number flashes on the VCR. It's not accidental. It's intentional. It was designed. It was put in there for a reason. And so I wanted to understand why. And I grew up in an environment where, my mom said I could do anything, which wasn't helpful because, well, what's anything? And my dad said, you can't do anything. You have to do this thing. And I'm like, but what about this thing? There's a thing in here that I want to do. And so that really sparked my journey and the biggest question of my life. What am I really here for? What am I really made of and made for? Who am I? I little did I know I had tapped back in to the original, the OG self-help guru, the Oracle of Delphi, who said, "Know thyself,"
Know thyself. That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was a
That the
woman.
great existential questions of all of us that humans have struggled with for as long as there were humans.
Exactly. I think it was Aristotle that said that the unexamined life is not worth living. And so was it Aristotle or Socrates? I think it was Aristotle. So the point is I had this impulse early on, and I played with it in various ways. I eventually ran away from home to get emancipated as an adult. Because my parents were a little, to me, crazy, and I needed to find my own path, forge my own path. And then I became an actor, and I was searching self-improvement. I was trying to know myself, but I focused it on fixing and changing and healing and improving myself, which is where most of us that are seekers, we end up somehow on a path of improving ourselves, whether it's improving ourselves intellectually or physically or emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It's all about, I'm not enough yet. Let me fix, change, heal, and improve myself. So I spent a decade or more trying to fix, change, heal, and improve myself. And the only thing I improved was my ability to describe why my life was so screwed up. And I could tell you when I was 10 and I had all A's and a B and my dad said, "What's with the B, son?" I could tell you that happened and it messed me up, man. And I could just describe all these things, but it was like trying to dig myself out of a hole. The more I tried to fix, change, heal, and improve myself, the deeper in the hole I got. And I eventually got addicted, so frustrated. I got addicted to drugs, alcohol. It was making me feel worse and worse about me, not better.
Yeah.
And I almost died of an overdose. And that was the first wake up call where I'm in an IV room and, the doctor's like, "You're lucky to be alive." And I couldn't understand how all of my self improvement had gotten me literally almost dead.
Yeah.
And I decided I needed to work harder or work smarter or manifest more, something, one of these, these ideas. And my life got better for a few months, as it usually does when you start again. And then I was doing a film in Jamaica as an actor, and everything started falling apart again. And I prayed to just get lost from everything. Be careful what you pray for. It actually works.
Just
And I went diving in a coral reef, and I then promptly got lost in the reef and stuck. And I was inside what looked like a underwater booby trapped tomb out of an Indiana Jones movie. Giant spikes of coral that would just shear me in half if they cut through me, all below me within inches. Fire coral all around me. I couldn't touch anything, or it was like 1,000 jellyfish stings. And I didn't know how to get out. I was stuck in this small spot with fire coral and spiked coral. Nobody knew I was out there. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't swim down. I couldn't lift my head out of the water. And I was gasping for air. And
were you snorkeling or scuba diving?
I was doing snorkeling and free diving. So I could go out and then dive deep, hold my breath, go deep.
Yeah.
I'd been learning how to breath hold. And there was no way to dive down, to get out. I didn't know where the exit was. The snorkel was full of water. It became useless at a certain point because if I tried to blow it out, if you understand, the spikes were this close to my stomach, so I couldn't breathe deeply. If I had to breathe I had to pretty much, and I couldn't relax. I had to paddle with just my fingers to keep me just at the right water level so I didn't get punctured and skewered by these spiked coral. I had to breathe in shallow bursts like this because there was no room for a deep breath or I would have been punctured. There were sharks in the water, known to be, and I don't know how dangerous they were, but nevertheless, and it was getting dark and nobody knew I was there. And
Oh, is there anything else that could make
yeah, it
this
was like all the
situation more
perfect,
complex?
it was the
Yeah.
perfect situation.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I knew I wasn't going to make it out alive. I was exhausted. I was done. I couldn't get out. I was stuck. I had nothing left. And it was getting dark, literally, and I never would have found my way out for sure. And there was a moment, it's hard to understand what it feels like to know you're going to die. Not, I hope I don't. I tried that. I tried to make a deal with God. I was like, please, I promise I'll go to church on Sunday. I literally said that. Please, God, get me out of this and I'll be a good boy. I promise. And God was not making
That's such a common thing,
it
Derek.
is. And I would, the universe was not playing let's make a deal. And and at a certain point, all that was left was legitimate, real, unconditional surrender. I
Right.
was done. I was just done. And and I can feel the emotion wave up in me again when I just really drop into that space. And and there was a moment of just exhale and I was done. And in that moment, there was a flash of light. And it's almost like a and I can't really I didn't really have the words for it then. I didn't have any words for it then. There was an experience. And in that light, there was an awareness that the self I had been trying to fix, change, heal, and improve was a fiction, an amalgamation of parental fantasies, peer pressure, societal conditioning, and nothing I would ever do would ever make him enough. And that there was another self in the midst of that. And this self had never been damaged or diminished, so it didn't need to be fixed or healed. And it was already whole and complete, so it could not be improved upon. Self improvement was an oxymoron. And again, I didn't have all the words at the moment. There was a ch. And then in the next moment, which I still am not sure how, I remember vaguely my hand going out of the water or something happening. But in the next moment, I was standing on top of this one piece of coral that was protruding out of the water, the only coral that was protruding out of the water. I couldn't see it from where I was. I only knew it once I was standing on it. I'm not sure how I got on it. That's the weird part. All of a sudden, I'm standing outside looking at where I'd been stuck and like and I saw this whole maze of and by the way, the exit was just a few inches behind me the whole time. I just couldn't see it. It
Right.
was just kind of a metaphor. And the
So
maze
so
of
this was
coral.
sort of a Scotty beam me up experience that all of a sudden
Yeah, it
this
was it was
how did I
something.
get
Either
here?
that or I just unconsciously, before I even knew what happened, something in my body took over. It was just like and pulled me out of the water. I don't know. I still can't see or remember what happened exactly.
Right.
I just remember something about my hand reaching up, like not almost like Luke Skywalker, trust the force, grabbing something, you know, and because it was not with my eyes or my human senses that I was doing it, but something shattered inside of me. Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall, and I saw this maze of coral, and it was a metaphor for my life. I'd been swimming through this maze all my life, searching and following shiny objects, and um and I could now see it in full technicolor, and I was able to jump off the other side, and I was free from the maze, and everything had a luminosity to it. I could see the prana, the light around everybody and everything. And that night in the hotel room, I had a dramatic breakdown and opening where I was on my knees. And all of a sudden, it was like somebody reached in to the depths of my being and pulled out a lifetime of grief and pain and all this stuff. And I just began to sob and I fell forward and something caught my hands, so I'm like hanging over like at an impossible angle and just sobbing. And I can feel the emotion again now. And and I never went back to that guy. I never was that guy again. I left the world of when I was as a performer at the time as an actor, and I basically went to a monastery. And that didn't go so well. Just a week or 2 in, fasting and silence for the first time ever, I freaked out and I broke into the monk's kitchen and stole food out of their Sub-Zero freezer in the middle of the night. and got violently sick and had my first out of body experience where these spirits were tormenting me. And I pretty much packed up and ran screaming out of the monastery. And I cloistered myself in my apartment for the next couple of years, got rid of books and TV and media, and just went inward. And that's when I discovered what had really happened in that spiritual opening, that inside the light, I began to see what I was seeing. And I began to understand what I eventually coined the law of emergence. And that is the idea that just as everything in creation comes from a seed or a pattern, or in the Platonic sense, a Platonic form, there are forms that are fundamental, like geometry. There are patterns that are fundamental, and all of life emerges from
Right,
a pattern.
we call them in philosophy, we call them ideal forms, right? I think
Yeah,
that's what
the
you're
realm of
referring.
ideal forms, exactly, perfect forms. And so I saw that, like I remember seeing an acorn and realize and looking up at a mighty oak tree and going, that thing came out of that thing. And the
And
acorn
and
wasn't,
it was in there,
it was in
right?
there.
The
Yeah.
tree is immanent, that means indwelling, in the acorn.
Yes. Both
Yeah,
in that little pattern that you can't really discern and read the information inside of, uh, for a whole oak tree, not to mention a whole oak tree, but in literally infinite forests of oaks. And not only is it in that seed pattern, it's in the quantum field. Just like your favorite music is playing right now, right here, right now. But you have to know the station and then you have to tune into that frequency. And if
yeah,
you match your frequency with the frequency where that song is playing, that station becomes manifest.
yeah,
It's already here, but it's not manifest. It becomes manifest. In other words, you have a manifestation. And so,
right,
um, that's the music isn't in the future in that sense, right? Your favorite music is here. And Jesus taught the same thing. And again, I used to read the Bible and I would throw it across the room and use it as a doorstop. I didn't understand any of this nonsense. God left a bitter taste in my mouth. And after this
yeah,
experience, went back and started reading it. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, uh-huh. Mhm. Of course, uh-huh. I'm like, whoa, it's like I suddenly learned a new language. And Jesus was saying, they're like, "When's heaven gonna come, master?" And he's like, "It's not going to come. It won't be lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It is within you, but having eyes, you can't see it. Having ears, you can't hear it. Let me teach you another way to experience. There's a whole nother dimension of senses that are not part of your outer sensorium." And that's what
right,
Jesus was teaching over and over and over. And that's what Buddha was teaching. And that's what every great master teacher has been teaching, that reality is invisible, inaudible, and intangible to the physical senses. But as you touch it, it manifests and it becomes something. And you that's what it means to glorify God or to manifest heaven or whatever metaphor, religion you like. But anyways, I saw all of this was like I saw it all. It all became clear. I could read any of the mystical books and traditions, and I did and became a student of them and could see same thing here. Buddha said that, Jesus said that, Lao Tzu said that, Kuan Yin said that, whoever. They're all saying the same thing, adding their unique twists and cultural idioms and different things. So
right.
so that
And
happened and I
making the same universal truths,
correct.
understandable to the people and cultures of their time and place.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah,
why they are different is because they got farmers over here, different kind of people or different kind of farmers, different kind of cultures, different kind of values and mores and traditions. And if they came alive today, if there was a master teacher walking around today, they would probably use computers and different metaphors, but it would be the same idea, which is what I tend to do. And I'm sure you do too. We find the metaphor of the time that can speak directly, like you said before, I think before we talked, stories. Stories are equipment for living. Stories are an embodiment of metaphor and myth and archetype. And it's a mechanism or a tool that we've evolved and adapted and that we live and think and dream and learn through. So they're just telling stories and describing it in their cultural based on their culture. So I saw that, and I saw through all that, and the dogma and the doctrine and the cultural idioms and all of that to the universal. And then I was like, I knew I was on to something. I could check my math, and I could see that it added up to the same thing across cultures, across time, across religions. And so I really wholeheartedly became a student of truth and spiritual truth and universal truth.
Just a little break from the program to mention a couple of things. Firstly, if you're enjoying this podcast, please like, subscribe, and leave a short comment. It really helps with the algorithm to find more people who would enjoy these interviews. Also, if you're interested in spiritual growth, you might be interested in my series of spiritual books. As a spiritual author and a former band director, I use my little "the band director" trademark in these books because I use music as a metaphor for life and the journey of becoming a musician as a metaphor for our spiritual journey. There are 3 books in this series. The Band Director's Lessons About Life is a book of modern day parables inspired by events from my teaching career. When you're working with kids, things naturally come up that we sometimes call teachable moments. Little events where you realize there's a bigger lesson happening right now than the alternate F sharp fingering on the clarinet that I was trying to teach. I started writing some of these little stories down and turning them into modern day parables. So, the Band Director's Lessons About Life has 50 little parables. It's a bit like a Chicken Soup for the Soul book. Each parable is about 3 pages long. Each begins with a story that happened at school, and then there's a reflection section that draws a spiritual lesson out of the events of the story. That is, it explains what the spiritual metaphor means. The Band Director's Lessons About Life is easy to read, makes a great gift, and expresses many universal spiritual principles in an easy to understand way. If you want to go deeper in your spiritual growth, I've also published a study guide to accompany the Book of Parables. It turns the Band Director's Lessons About Life into a year-long course in spiritual development. You will spend a week on each of the 50 parables. There is a deeper teaching about the meaning of each parable, reflection and discussion questions, especially helpful if you would like to use the study guide in a group setting, and a different meditation for each lesson. The 3rd book in this series is a little book titled The Band Director's Pocket Guide to Spiritual Growth. This little book explains a simple 3-step process for putting your spiritual growth into high gear. You might also be interested in my 2-book series about the craziness in our world today. The first book, What the Hell is Going On? The web of fraud that is enslaving everyone and how we can escape to freedom, is still the best big picture expose of what's really going on behind all this craziness. It includes a spiritual perspective of what's happening, which most books leave out. But it also looks at the economics, the philosophy, the psychology, the history, etc., of the many trends that just don't make sense and are, in fact, elaborate frauds. The second book in this series focuses more on solutions to the mess we're in. It's The Way Forward: How to Escape the Totalitarian Control of the New World Order and Heal from its Trauma. This book explains the 3 types of warfare we're being subjected to: spiritual warfare, psychological warfare, and 5th-generation warfare, and how we can sensibly respond on these 3 levels of body, mind, and spirit. You can learn more about all of my books at my website, www.cominghomespirit.com, because after all of us are on a spiritual journey back home to God. So that's cominghomespirit.com. You can also go directly to my Shopify page at cominghomespirit.myshopify.com, where you can purchase my books directly from me in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. I can now ship paperback books to the United States and Canada. If you're enjoying this podcast, I really think you'll enjoy my many books as well. Now, back to the program.
And I saw that so much of my efforts to fix, change, heal, and improve were most of the resistance to what is meant to happen naturally. This is again when Jesus said, "Look at the lilies of the field. They do not toil or spin, yet spinning means they used to make clothes, with the
Yeah, yeah,
they do not toil or spin, but they are arrayed more beautifully than Solomon, the richest
yeah.
king of all time." And he's like, and so like, look at that. If they're beautiful and they have all this stuff and they're all taken care of, don't you think you're at least that taken care of? This is grass that will be thrown into the furnace and will burn in the fire. And, anyway, so again, the same idea. And I saw that. I'm like, oh yeah. And even the law of attraction was popular at the time. And I began to talk about what I called the unattractive side of the law of attraction. And because if you're trying to
Just
attract
roughly,
it,
sorry to interrupt, Derek,
no.
but just roughly, how old were you? What stage of life were you
Well, see,
at
I'm
this time?
25 now, so I was probably 12. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah, that's
I
right.
was I was in my
Yeah, me
early
too.
20s, early 20s.
Okay. Oh, really? Well, you're quite young then still.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be 60, so, um,
Well, like you see this, eh? Like
yeah,
I used to think that I was old and mature when I was 20 or 25, but I have a
so did
different
I.
perspective now.
Yeah, I thought I knew everything at the
Yeah,
time, and it's funny how if you do this work sincerely, now I feel like I know almost nothing.
yeah.
And so, so that's the journey of hopefully the dissolution of the sense of a self separate from life, the one that thinks it knows and that it does, and the discovery that there is a knower and a doer within us, and it's not our personality. Our personality is the lampshade or the light bulb, and but the electricity is the thing lighting everything up. And, I'm still on that journey, obviously, and discovering and dissolving. And we'll talk about probably how crisis and challenge is one of the most common ways that you crack open to spiritual unfoldment. Fortunately or unfortunately, it just happens to be the case, partly because
Well, it's
it,
because
we're,
how we learn,
yeah,
right? I mean, as I've written, I you're probably not familiar with my books, but after I retired from being a band director, I wrote a little book of modern day parables based on experiences during my teaching career, and it's called The Band Director's Lessons of Life. And
nice.
I say in there that I would sometimes tell my students, we don't learn much from success. When we win a race, you win a game, when you win a basketball game, you just kind of pat yourself in the back. Aren't we great? You don't learn much from it, right? We
We might
learn
learn
from
how
failure.
much beer we can drink or
Yeah, all that kind
how
of
many
stuff.
margaritas we
We
can throw back, but yeah,
Yeah, we learn from failure. When things
yeah.
go wrong, we learn best when there's pain associated with it. But I would tell my students, the teaching profession kind of frowns on me using pain as a teaching tool. So I'll just just listen to what I tell you. But yeah, if there's pain associated with
2
it, if
plus
there's a
2,
failure,
whack. 2 plus 2
yeah,
equals 4, whack. You won't
that's
forget
right.
that one now, kid.
Then we ask ourselves, like, what went wrong? Like, how come we lost this game? What do we need to change?
Yes.
So it's out of failure and out of all that kind of out of crisis and out of problems. That's what motivates us to change. Success doesn't motivate us to change. Success makes us think that we know everything already.
Yeah, failure is the most data-rich experience you can have. Edison didn't just fail at creating the light bulb 10,000 times or however many thousands, different reports differ. He also learned he learned all the ways not to make a light bulb, but he also learned a tremendous amount about other raw materials and what led to a lot of other inventions down the line. Just a deep a research project and understanding how raw materials conduct and all that stuff. And a baby doesn't learn to walk by walking. They learn to walk by falling. And the falling and the feedback system builds their proprioception. And, if you buffered the baby from the fall, caught them every time, patted everything, they would fail to learn how to walk correctly. They wouldn't build the proprioceptive mechanisms. But also then when you look at walking, actually the physiology of walking, it is controlled falling. When you walk, you fall, but you catch yourself
Yeah,
in micro falls, micro catches. It's fall catch, fall catch, fall catch, fall catch. You've
yeah,
gotten really good at forward falling,
yeah,
controlled falling.
yeah.
And
Because
success
you're
is
always moving your center of gravity in front of your feet,
exactly,
which
exactly,
would normally cause you to fall, but you stick
exactly.
your other foot out and you catch yourself, and yeah,
And that's what the stumbling and the falling and the face planting teaches you is how to master controlled falling.
yeah,
And then eventually learn how to do it really fast, and that's called running. And if you really master it, you can get a gold medal. But um, but the same thing is true of success. It's an understanding that it's mastering controlled failing. And meaning you have to keep putting yourself in a position to fail, meaning you have to keep living on the emerging edge of your potential. As the quote from an anonymous person says, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space, right? And so you have to learn how to live on the edge. And from an evolutionary standpoint, this means you have to do hard things on the regular. If you're not uncomfortable on a regular basis, you're slowly atrophying and aging quicker and dying. And you're just not actualizing the potential within the seed of your own soul, as we talk about that. And so what I learned by all of that was, again, there's a seed within us. There's a pattern, call it a purpose. Um, and just like every other seed in nature, you can't make the seed happen. You can only make what's in it welcome
right,
by creating the conditions that are congruent with the pattern within the seed. So that means you have to know what the seed is. Otherwise, it's accidental. And that's where it comes back to know thyself. And then you have to if you don't know what the seed is, you might be giving it too much water, not enough, too much sun, not enough shade, whatever. So you got to know what it is. And then you have to create the climate or the conditions in which it is meant and designed to flourish and to flower. That's a very different approach than I'm an empty shell and I have to go around and fill myself up with some seed parts. Or
right.
I'm an acorn, I'm an inadequate oak tree, and I have to go out there and gather a bunch of oak pieces and parts and build an oak. But that's the way we think. Or I'm going to attract an oak. Can you imagine like a little seed
The law of
trying to
attraction, yeah,
visualize and bring an oak to it? You know, it would end up becoming bird food or squirrel food or one of the many acorns the squirrel, ends up eating instead of planting and forgetting about. But um, so you start, it just broke down all the myths and the false ways that we've learned to grow. And it doesn't mean there's not a process of developing ourselves, but it's not improving ourselves. The acorn doesn't improve itself into an oak tree. It surrenders to the soil and it's indigenous, meaning it has to be in the right soil and the right environment. But because it doesn't have conscious volition and agency like we do, we are unique. Made in the image and likeness of God simply means in the most in the secular sense, I guess. Is it secular? Yeah. Which one is which? I always get those mixed up. Secular is not religious, right?
The sacred and the secular.
So the non-secular versus secular, whatever. The one that's not religious, in the most basic sense, made in image and likeness of God means that we have the same creative faculty that life does in terms of being able to create out of nothing. And so we are endogenous, meaning we can create our own conditions internally. We're like a walking greenhouse by how we put where we put our attention, what we focus on, the ingredients of our mind that we cultivate our soul with. So no matter what side of the tracks you're born on, no matter how long you've been struggling, no matter what's going on outside of you, we have the power, like the Big Bang, to create out of nothing or to resurrect from the ashes. And all of that became apparent to me through this process of, being broken and broke, literally living on mac and cheese in a little flat, to being suicidal, and then having this opening. And then on the other
Right.
side of this opening, so many of the things that I let go of all that resistance and began to honor who I was, serve and feed and fill up in a way that was in integrity with who I was, not who I wasn't and I was going to try to be. And the result was my life began to flourish and my mission launched and my life's work unfolded. And within a year, I was making an amazing living. I fell in love, like everything that was like being held in escrow. Suddenly I got access to it. Now, that was the beginning. And I've never, lost that awareness completely. But it's important to understand that, those big experiences, those transformative experiences, as great as they are, they're like, sometimes they will just shatter you. And this was a partial shattering. Like Eckhart Tolle, literally, I can't live with myself anymore. And then he falls asleep and it's like a suicidal thought, and he wakes up and his ego is collapsed. That can happen. It's rare. And it's usually, in my opinion, the result of previous incarnations and other work that's been happening. So you can't really judge based on where a person is or at or anything like that. But it's important in my experience, barring the rare total egoic collapse or complete satori moment of awakening, um, even with those big insights, they tend to be an evolutionary glimpse. And then it's incumbent upon us. Now we have to do the work,
Right.
right? It's like, okay, I see who I am. I see what's possible. Many of you here listening, you've touched, or you wouldn't be here, an awareness. There's something more to me. You've touched an awareness of a deep desire. A desire means of the sire, of the father, of the creative impulse, or from the stars. That desire is showing you something in you trying to come out, not
Right.
something outside of you you have to go out and get. But here's the key. It's like a pregnant woman, when the desire is like the kick of the baby. When she feels the kick, that's the evidence she's pregnant. That's not the evidence I need to go get a baby. And so when we feel that burning desire, I want a bigger, better life. I want to live my purpose. I want to help people. I want to love more. I want to have this conversation with my husband, or I want to have a conversation with my boss, or I deserve a promotion, or whatever it is. That may not seem spiritual, but it is. It's something in you wanting to emerge. The key is, now you have to have the courage. That's the know yourself part. You have to have the courage to be yourself.
Right.
And why is this? So it's pretty much the whole wax on, wax off of evolution, spiritually or otherwise, is know yourself, be yourself. Know yourself, be yourself. To thine own self be true. Know thyself. That's it. That's the whole ball game. And but the problem is, to know yourself, you have to actually be interested in yourself and what you're made of and made for and what really makes you tick and what's running you. And you can't be yourself if you don't know yourself. You're going to end up being someone else.
Yeah.
And you've
Oh,
been
there's lots of
conditioned.
that going on these days, isn't there?
Absolutely. Our minds have been
Yes.
colonized for millennia. And so we have to dig down beneath the wreckage and the ruins and the concrete to discover, what am I really made of and made for? Um, but that's what I think is so important, because people, spiritual seekers, they seek after these high experiences, the lights and the bliss and the out of body stuff. And I've had all of those. I've had so many out of body experiences and flying through dimensions and all of that. And it's fun. It's interesting. And sometimes it bears fruit. But the most important thing is the fruit, meaning, are you more loving? Are you more kind? Are you more compassionate, especially to yourself? That's a lot of other things heart-centered, spiritually inclined people forget. They're all about serving or loving or want to be more loving to others, but they forget themselves in the equation. And you can't do that. You can't just breathe out all day. You'll die. You have to breathe in, right?
That's
So, and this is, by the
I
way, the
love your
first,
metaphors. You got great metaphors.
yeah, I
You
never
can't
met a
just
floor
breathe
I
out all
didn't,
the time. You gotta
I've
breathe
never
in
met a
sometimes.
floor I didn't like. But like, when Jesus talks about the first two commandments that matter, he says, love God with all your heart and soul and might or mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. That's the whole ballgame. Well, from again, a non-religious, even a religious understanding from what Jesus was teaching, which was that God was within you, not outside of you. Jesus never taught a God outside of you. He said it's within you and it must be worshiped in spirit. And all the great masters never taught. An actual enlightened mystic or master will never teach of a God outside of you.
Right.
And that's, God made us in his or its image and likeness or hers. And we've been trying to repay the favor ever since, making God over in our image. And, but this,
Well,
so we
because that's
project
all our conscious mind, right? Our conscious mind is very limited in terms of what it can conceive.
100%.
So we all conceive God in terms of being a human,
Yeah.
one way or another, and we have to conceive God somehow, but
But
we're
that's
never going to
part of
get
the
it right.
problem. That's actually one of the biggest obstacles to knowing God for real, to knowing reality. One of the biggest initiations a seeker has to go through is killing off all their gods,
Yeah,
because God is not a concept. And that's what it means to have a false idol, to
yeah,
make a graven image of. Anything you make a god is blocking you from the experience of God. Even making Jesus a god or Buddha a god or Krishna a god or God as a man with a big beard and maybe hair kind of like you. Um,
yeah.
anything that's
Sitting up on a cloud in the
sitting
sky
on a
looks a little
cloud.
bit like Charlton Heston.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly. And it's a nice starting point, but all you're doing is creating a more advanced version of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
yeah,
And this is why Jesus said God must be worshiped in spirit, and why he said it's within you, and why the Bible says the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life, meaning the form is the end of the experience. The minute there's a form, you are now back into the matrix, whether it's the form of a thought, a concept, a belief, a story, a person, a prince, a principality, anything that you've now turned into a form. It doesn't mean forms are bad, they're just not true. They're a
yeah,
relative expression or projection of an infinite pers- perfection. And
yeah,
so, based on a limited perception, as you said. And so,
yeah.
again, it doesn't mean your perceptions are bad. We're always going to have perceptions. We're always going to turn those perceptions into a concept and then into a belief and then into a story. We just have to keep expanding our awareness so that we can have some degree of our awareness that is always holding the story or the concept. I was an actor. I got into my part so completely, it would look like I lost myself. I mean, I was crying and raging and screaming and fighting and all the real human experiences, method acting, and but I never forgot completely that I was the actor
Yeah,
in the character in a
yeah,
play. And so that's what it means to be in the world but not of it. That's what it means to really increasingly expand the aperture of our awareness to the awareness that if I can name it, as the Tao says, that's not it. It's
yeah.
or
That's
as
right.
Zen says, it's the finger pointing to the moon, but it's not the real moon. And even now in simulation theory and hypotheses nowadays, there's a lot of breakthroughs in neuroscience and even Nobel Prize winning physics that is proving scientifically time and space are not real, that nothing is real locally that this is all like a desktop of a computer and it's just a bunch of icons, but the real is behind the scene,
Yeah.
SEEN. And
Yeah.
so all of this to
Yeah, like
say that
Shakespeare said, and then, the
all the
metaphor
world
of
is
the
a stage.
actor
Yeah.
is really such an excellent, way to try to grasp,
Yes.
who we are and the
Yes.
relationship of what is real and what is not real, right? I mean, famously, Shakespeare said, I can't remember what play it was in, "All
All
the
the
world
world
is
is a
a
stage, and men and
stage."
women are but players upon it. We each have our exits and entrances. And he goes on to describe the different parts that the man plays. I
Yeah,
think that was, is it As You Like It? Or, anyways, it doesn't matter. Great
yeah,
play, great
yeah,
writer, very mystical creator
yeah.
himself.
And
Um,
then at the end of the play, right, we take off our makeup and our costumes, and the hero, the hero and the villain and everybody, we all go and have beer together, right? And it's
exactly.
going to be at the end of our life. All the people that we struggled with and we thought were our enemies, and you know what? We take off these little meat suits that we have when we die. We're all going to go have beer together in heaven or wherever the heck we go or whatever happens afterwards, because we are eternal souls and we're here on a stage playing a part. And the problem is we get too lost in a part and we forget that we are eternal souls and that we are love, we are God. And anyway, yeah, sorry to
No,
interrupt. You're doing great.
absolutely. And that's the trick of it all, right? It's like, it's all, we love smoke and mirrors and magic and movies and stories. There's a reason we love it, because it allows us to experience and explore different dimensions and feelings and the wonder and the awe and the magic of life. Because it is, as Einstein said, you have to make a decision. All of life's a miracle or none of it is. But we know when we're getting the magic trick, we like to be fooled and go, "Oh my god." But there's a part of us that knows he didn't actually do magic. He didn't actually make a rabbit appear out of nowhere. And we love going to the movies and we lose ourselves in it. And we're like, "Oh my god. Oh no. Whoa, no, don't leave him." But we know this isn't actually happening. And but we are able to suspend disbelief for a period and have the full emotional, visceral experience, and we love it. And
Yeah,
that's why we incarnated in 3D, in this
that's what we're doing here.
stage, on Earth stage, because it's a play, as Shakespeare said. And it's why I was an actor. I got to play all these parts and feel all these feelings without ever actually dying. And and that's why we watch a movie, or the author writes the story, or I get to play all the parts, all the shadows and the light, the demons and the saints. I get to explore the full range of experience and aliveness and all of that. The dark and the light are both alike to thee, O Lord. So I get to experience all of it. And there's no problem. Nobody actually gets hurt. Nobody actually dies. No animals were injured during this production. And that's the same thing about life. Now, and that's what we're practicing with going to the movies and playing parts and playing make believe and pretend, and we're practicing living like eternal beings that have nothing to lose. And then the crises and the losses in our life, if we do it consciously, we're practicing dying to experience that death is just a skin that you shed. But that's the practice, and if you can practice living fully and dying every day a little bit, you are that is the practice of spiritual awakening. It's
Right.
not sitting on a mountaintop, being on a 40-day meditation retreat, although all that's fine. I've done my share of meditation retreats. It's not necessarily having to go and do ayahuasca in the jungle, you know, although that's fine, but be safe, whatever the thing is, there's all these different modalities. It's important to know these modalities are partly to shake us out of the rigid concepts of ourself and of reality and of God. It's to shake us out of it for a minute, to pop out of the matrix and go, "Oh, that's not me. That's not God. That's not my Uncle Joe. That's not real." this whole thing I was certain is all that there is. There's a little more. And
Yeah.
I can feel it and experience it viscerally, not just intellectually. That's what a crisis can do. That's what a medicine journey can do. That's what a deep meditation retreat or experience can do. Sometimes, if there's a spiritual master, they can just bonk you on the head and give you a little brief moment. But all of those are not the end all. That's just, hey, I want you to have an experience that there's more to you and to life than you think, quite
Right.
literally, than what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And you're inside of a museum in your mind, and you're walking around looking at all the artifacts and thinking that's reality. Let's go outside of the museum into the light, outside of Plato's cave, into the light, and let's just see what else there is. But that's the beginning of the journey, not the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
Now,
It's meant
can
to.
you hold
th-
on to that light and that larger awareness as you go back into your meat suit, back into your boardroom and bedroom and the bullshit of the world? Can you hold a little more love, compassion, expanded awareness, blah, blah, blah? And then
Yeah.
try it again tomorrow. That's the practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and
Little
and
by
go
little.
ahead. Were you gonna say something?
I already forgot.
Okay.
I blame it on the weight here. So many, you're talking, and I think, oh, hey, I should say that. I should say that. And it's okay. I do need to control myself because you're the guest. I mean, it's
Oh
about
no, I
you,
love what
not
you're
about
saying.
all my things.
One of the reasons I loved acting is not just because I got to play a bunch of parts, but because I'd always had a love of understanding, again, the psyche and the psychology of humanity and myself. So I got to be surprised and shocked and to discover, ooh, I didn't know I had that in me.
Yeah.
Right. And then I remember later on in my life, in my previous marriage, I remember one day, we were having this fight or this argument about the same old thing. And she was calling me names, you're this, you're controlling, you're this, that, whatever. And I was always defending myself. And then one day, I was a meditator at the time and I was doing the work. Suddenly I stopped in the middle of it. The first thing I did was the writer in me went, God, and the actor said, this is a really good scene in the middle of the fight. And I remember that broke the spell when I suddenly got, wow, this is a great scene because I popped out of Derek, that particular ego personality locked in the shadow dancing with part of himself in the form of his wife. And I was observing it now as the author, the actor, the
Yes.
creator. And
Yes.
then I had to go sit down and meditate. I couldn't fight anymore. And so I had to sit down and meditate. And I'm like, suddenly I'm thinking of all the things she was calling me and all the things I've been defending and the control freak, the this, the that. And I was like, wow, Derek is a really interesting character. And suddenly I saw Derek as this work of art, as this work of literature, as Shakespearean. And I was just so appreciative of his complexity and his nuance and all the dimensions of him. And I was like, it was the beginning. It took some years for the fulfillment of this. It was the beginning of, I like Derek. Derek is really
That's
cool.
good.
I don't need to, once again, I don't need to fix Derek. There's parts of Derek I don't like, I judge, I reject. And as a result, that energy creates a projection and is creating a shadow dance with my wife. And she will never agree with me as long as I need her to, and as long as I have to defend because of the shame, the guilt, the fear. And I fell in love with another layer of getting to know myself again through struggle, but through a struggle in the midst of a conscious daily practice. So I was daily intending more than I want to fix, change, heal anything, myself included. I want to know the truth that makes me free. I want to see with the eyes of God. I want to feel with the heart of God. I want to know with the mind of the universe. Every day I was doing the work so that in the moment I lost myself in this little mini one act play with my wife, that work took over. It popped me out of it. And I was able now to see it, to see myself. And it took my self awareness and ultimately healing and integration to the next level as I began to fall in love with all of the parts of me I had hated and rejected because I had been taught, conditioned, or learned. What that resulted in is the end of outer conflict for the most part. Eventually, it's very hard now for anybody to get me mad or upset or to trigger me because I've gotten trigger happy. I love it when I get there's a
That's cute.
right? It's like there's a
Another
trigger.
beautiful metaphor. Derek, I love your beautiful metaphors.
Yeah. So that was like, ooh, this is triggering me. I'm about to grow. I'm about to know myself more. I'm about to discover more of my potential. And that's the flip. That's when you know all of life is a miracle. That not just some of it, it has to be all of it or nothing, as Einstein said, and that you understand everyone and everything is conspiring for your ultimate awakening. And when it's full of crisis and chronic pain and problems, it's an indication of the degree of resistance to the next level of life that is trying to emerge in you. Kind of like you plant a seed and a tree grows, and over time, maybe you forgot the seed was there, or maybe the tree grows and you build a sidewalk by it and a wall by it and you build a life around it, but the tree keeps growing. And then one day you notice it's tearing up the sidewalk, it's knocking down the wall, and you think, this is terrible. No, it's life emerging. You just built the wall too damn close and the sidewalk too close. You didn't understand, or it's time to move the wall. It's time to move the sidewalk because, and so when in our life, when stuff starts crumbling or breaking or getting knocked down, that crisis, that chronic challenge is a signal or a message. More is trying to emerge. And so you want to take your attention off the problem. As Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the level of the problem, anyways, and focus on a different question. Not what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? What's trying to emerge in me? What's the bigger me, the bigger life, the more? Back to our initial thing about desire. What do I really want to be, to do, to create, to contribute, to become? Stop trying to fix, change, control, or solve, and instead get really interested in creating the opening, the welcoming for what's in you trying to emerge. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
We've kind of been going a fairly long time, so if I could make just kind of one comment
Yeah.
and then share a perspective with you and get your feedback on that, and then we want to get back to kind of where we kind of left off your story. We got into a lot of a kind of metaphysical conversation, but we want to get back to your
Yeah.
story, where your life has taken you, the kind of work you're doing now, the two great books you've written, you've got your own podcast,
Three,
all
actually
kinds of stuff.
three now. I have three books,
Oh, three books.
five
Okay,
books, but
good.
three self-help books. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So the first little observation is you mentioned the importance of two things. Number one, know thyself,
Yeah.
and then be thyself.
Yes.
And that's almost another way of saying with the title of my own podcast, expressing and revealing your truth.
100%.
Right? It's the truth about who you really are. First of it's to
Yes.
reveal to yourself
Yes.
the truth about who you really are, and
Yes.
then express that, be
Yes.
yourself, be that truth, expressing your truth in the world. So the
Yes.
other thing that I would like to share this perspective, you talked about, and it's a great real life example, right? Because all of us have had arguments with people. If we're young, it's arguments with our siblings or our parents, and if we're older, it's arguments with our wife or husband or something like that. So the example of having an argument with your wife and then kind of realizing sort of you when you're doing that, and I think everybody can do this, but not everybody does do this. You kind of somehow see yourself from outside. And we could sometimes call that the observer perspective,
Yeah.
right? Where you're kind of you take a part of your your consciousness and you set it outside and you watch what you're doing, what you're feeling, how you're reacting, as
Yeah.
if you're looking at another person, and you realize that hey, I'm playing a role here, but there's other roles I could play. I
Yes.
could react in other ways. I think that part of our self improvement for that part of us that needs self-improvement, and we can, because there's a part of us that's perfect, as you say. and needs no self-improvement. But that part of us, that the outside part that isn't perfect, when we can look at that and we can say, I'm going to choose to react in a different way. I'm going to even though I'm realizing that I have all of these Jungian archetypes within me, and all of the dysfunctional manifestations of those archetypes, and the ideal ones, all of them, and the masculine, the feminine archetypes, all of them are within everybody. And we can draw on those, as you do as an actor, right? You're a nice guy, but you got to play a villain. So you draw on the evil part. But that comes from within you, because everything is within us, right? All of those archetypes are there. So part of like the self-improvement is really choosing to draw on a different aspect of those archetypes that are already within us. And so that's a little bit of a different perspective on something, on kind of what I think you've described.
De-
How does that resonate with you, Derek?
yeah, yeah. What I would still invite people to hold as a new model is, again, not improving, not self-improvement, self-development, the developing of the self. But like, I would keep bringing back to the metaphor of the gardener and the flower or the tree, is the gardener never is improving the plant. Whatever the gardener is doing, whatever she's doing, she's creating conditions, she's watering, weeding, feeding. So there's stuff to do. She's pruning, she's, doing things to the tree, to the plant, to the soil. But then you ask why? What is all of that in service to? It's always in service to asking and answering, what's the next best condition in which this that already is will thrive, will flower, and will flourish? How can what do you need? What else do you need to be more you? I'm
Yes.
listening. Like George Washington Carver, the man who spoke to the flowers, and discovered all these things about flowers. He could turn them into all kinds of inventions because he could hear what they needed and what they were really made for. And so, and that's love. Love is the force that meets the need of every seed in creation. How? By asking, what do you need, my dear? Who are you really? What's in you? How can we open out a way, as the poet Robert Browning said, to release that inner imprisoned splendor? It's
Yeah.
love is like, I'm going to listen, I'm going to hear, I'm going to hold until you heal, until you reveal what's already here. And I'm here. I'll be here. Just you tell me when you're ready. What do you need? Who are you? What are you thinking? And that's the first commandment. Love God with all your heart and soul and might. God is within you. God is that spark, that seed, that pattern, that truth, that Christ, that Atman, that Buddha mind. God is that divine within you. Loving God with all your heart and soul. The reason that's number one is because that's your only actual job. Your first job. If you skip that job, you're already off the beam and there's no way to ever get on it. Second commandment, now that you are knowing what you're made of and made for, who you are, what God is within you, what wants to emerge, and you're loving it, you're meeting its needs so that it can flower. What happens now? You have flowers, you have fruits, you have a byproduct. Now that you give away. And that's loving your neighbor. Now you take all that you have, the perfume, the flowers, the fruits of your emergence, and you put it in service to the community, to your loved ones, to the strangers. That wisdom, the knowledge of the journey of knowing yourself, all of that now is the fruits of loving God within you. And now all of that is in service of asking your neighbor, how can I serve? What do you need? Really listening, not to myself, but now I'm listening to you. Now I'm God going, love going, what do you need to flower and to flourish? And that's the master circuit. Put those two pieces together. That's the master circuit for the flourishing of our being and of the beloved community. And that's it. And again, that's back to the simplest thing, which is know yourself, be yourself, love the divine within you, love yourself, and then extend that love to others. And love is the force that has only one job, to know you and to serve you so you can be you.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful summation. Okay, so let's carry on from there, Derek. Tell us kind of where your life went after the transformation, the books you've written, the work you do now. If we'll kind of end up with that and let us
Sure,
know
sure.
how listeners can contact you and your website. We'll put your website in the show notes as well, of course.
Uh,
So,
well, I would say the
where
one
did
thing
your
I'll say,
transformation take you, Derek?
yeah, I mean, I'll say just, again, we'll cliff note it here a bit, but that was a beautiful, it was a very difficult time. I was, like I said, I was broken, suicidal. Then I had a spiritual opening and almost died. And then my life began to flourish, and it flourished for years after that. And again, sometimes people think, we're just going to manifest and attract and make more money and have more win friends and influence others and all these wonderful, beautiful manifestations. And that's part of the fruits of growing. It's not what the spiritual path is actually about or what it often looks like. And and I, learned that very, very difficult way, my journey. And so it's important to understand, again, not just how can I use spirituality to have amazing experiences or to manifest a better life, but to understand, how do I embrace the inevitable crises? Everybody must bear their cross. How do I do that? And I didn't understand that except ultimately through experience and going through a terrible divorce after all those years, suffering with a lot of physical challenges, the dark night of the soul and the dark night of the senses. And and then not only thinking I was going to lose everything I'd built, and then ultimately having my fortune stolen from me, and then having my child taken from me, losing a child, the death of my son, and then the cancer with my wife. And so, like, I went through, again, like a little Job story, my own little Job. Will you still have faith? Will I still believe? Will I still seek the truth? Or will I just curse God and die? Will I give up? Will I acquiesce to the conditions? Because of the practice we've been talking about of knowing myself and being myself and seeking first the kingdom of heaven within, or nirvana, whatever you want to call it, more than I wanted to fix, change, control anything, I wanted to know the truth and be the truth no matter what, and be
Right.
love to myself and others. That built the necessary grit and resilience so that when I was shattered and robbed from and annihilated with the tragic death of a child, all these things that, like, that I have every reason to say, the hell with all of this, right?
Yeah.
But because of
Yeah.
that
And
foundation,
these things often destroy people.
often destroy
Yeah.
people, 100%.
Yeah.
And here's the good news, bad news. It always destroys you. But if you know the you that's a little bit bigger than the you think you are, while the you that you think you are is being destroyed, there's still enough you left over to hold that part as it falls
Right.
apart. And that's what happened with me. It's like I could sit and I could meditate and feel myself turning to ash, and feel the grief and and all the stuff, the shadows, the grief, the blame, the shame, the regret, and observe it. Be the observer, be the witness. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Be still and know that I in the midst of you are God. Be still, stand still, have patience, wait upon the Lord. All these religious sayings were like,
Yeah.
this is real. This is not intellectual, religious kind of masturbation. This is real, gritty practice when you're in it. Um, and then, yes, when I lost my son, a complete annihilation. And I remember, even in the moment I got the phone call that my son had died, and my human self just lost it. I was howling like a dying animal, and my wife was there trying to figure out what to do with me. Inside, the voice bubbled up, the bigger me, and was like, thank you, thank you, God, thank you, God. I know that this will be triumphant and I'll break through. And there was like a prayer going on while Derek was being annihilated. And I
Right.
cried for 3 years straight, every single day. And then one day I was walking and the voice said, when the form that holds your love is shattered, the love is not lost, it is liberated.
That's beautiful.
And that gets back to the overarching thing we've been talking about, which is the concepts, the forms of what God is, what I am, what you are, husband, wife, child, what the world is, what America is, whatever. The forms hold the quality of something, the love, the peace, the joy, the power, the freedom, the beauty, until it's time to grow. And then the form, you have to shatter it. It has to be broken. But it's not the loss. You don't lose love, peace, joy, freedom, beauty, abundance, health, wealth, wisdom, companionship. You have now the opportunity to expand your conscious awareness of what it really is. And then that takes a new form, a new world, a new heaven, a new capacity to love everybody as your child, a new capacity of wealth and abundance beyond your bank account or your job or a capitalist model or whatever. And so the problem is whenever we get stuck and we go from perception to projection to perfection, from perfection to perception, projection to protection, and we lock it in. This is me, this is you, this is us, this is the world, this is God, and I will kill you and I will fight to my death to protect that concept. That's where we now are lost in the matrix, and a Jesus has to come along, or a Neo has to come along, or whoever, and break us out of the matrix. But that's the bottom line I want to leave. It's not the light and the experiences and the awakening. It's, if you really want to awaken, set the intention every day to awaken no matter what, more than anything. I don't want to control, manipulate. I want to wake up, expand, and be more and more and more of life and who I am, no matter what. That's my intention. So now when the thing starts shattering or I find myself clinging, I can take a breath. I can go back to my intention. I can ask what is seeking to emerge in me, and I can have the courage to be true to that. And if you just do that every day, you're going to fall on your face, but you're going to get back up and you're going to learn how to walk, by falling with purpose. So you guys can find me on YouTube, Legendary Life, Derek Rydall. Lots and lots of trainings, my podcast, Emergence, millions of downloads, lots and lots of trainings. You can also go to Derek Rydall, DerekRydall.com, and there's tons of free trainings, and I give away 98% of everything. You can also get my latest book, A Whole New Human. We didn't really talk about it, but with AI and this new industrial revolution, we're heading right into a tsunami and a storm, the likes of which we're not prepared for. Right. That will be the biggest identity crisis humanity has ever faced, and one of the greatest opportunities for a whole new renaissance. Yes. And so if you want to be future-proof and you want to protect and preserve who you really are, your humanity, and future-proof your wealth and your health and your well-being and your work and all of that, get the book. I walk you through the 10 evolutions that we need to make to survive and thrive in this brave new world. I have other books there too, wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc. So that's me.
Fantastic. Derek, it's been an honor and a joy to have you here today. God bless you on your journey and in your work, and may the light always fill you, and may you share the light with the whole world. Amen.
Amen. So it is.